Good afternoon. I'm sure you all heard all the stories about how cities need to increase their environmental quality when they're dealing with climate change mitigation, adaptation, they're dealing with energy and resource scarcity, and they have to improve biodiversity and ecosystem services in urban environments. We also know that definitely cities need to work on their architectural quality. They need to deal with aesthetics and attractiveness. They need to create robust living environments. They need to deal with flexibility and functionality over a long period of time, for which they originally may not have been designed. And they have to deal with cost issues. And cities definitely need to deal with quality of life. After all, we need to create cities where people are healthy, they have good well-being, they have good security, they have good accessibility, there is diversity and attractiveness. Now, these goals have been around for decades. Some have been around as long as cities have existed, some are a bit more recent, but all are very urgent. And the question is, can smart cities contribute to this? Or is this smart cities approach maybe only going to create even more problems? Now, and the question is also, do we even need, yet another program? So in Norway, we already have very good and very robust programs dealing with a lot of environmental issues. For example, we have the Research Center on Zero-Emission Buildings, dealing with energy efficiency and emissions in buildings, in cooperation with industry, with public government, with research, with education, and creating a lot of good both research on details, on connections, and on implementation in practice. But the thing is, of course, you can only get so far with individual buildings. You have to look also at the space between the buildings, how they are connected on a neighborhood scale, an urban scale, and beyond. Then we also have the Cities of the Future program with the 13 largest cities in Norway, in cooperation again with industry, with research, with education, and looking at a lot of distinct topics such as land use and infrastructure, climate change adaptation, waste, consumption, and stationary energy. Also there we can clearly see that you can only reach so far by looking at each of these topics separately. You need some kind of integrated assessment, combining all of these topics and sectors and disciplines, and creating a holistic policy. So the thought is, Smart Cities not yet another program, but rather looking at the added value that smart cities could contribute to programs such as Cities of the Future and the Zero Emission Buildings Center program. So kind of energy efficient, zero emission, resilient cities of the future 2.0 smarter cities program, dealing both with intelligent design and smart technologies where appropriate, but also good integrated assessment across disciplines and sectors, and above all, a good stakeholder interaction. So people, it's often very much about people, individuals, meeting, talking together, finding common problems and goals, and trying to cooperate in order to reach a solution. So creating those platforms where people can meet and exchange opinions and exchange experiences, whether they are a success or a failure, everyone can learn from these. Of course, it's not just about talking and, forwarding your opinions. We also need some kind of knowledge and research methods and implementation methods and experiences in order to build upon. So, for example, ICT can give us very good opportunities to both, to combine, for example, a climate scenario, which is downscaled to a specific urban region, combine it with demographic analysis and economic analysis for that specific part of town, and then looking at, for example, what is the energy use in that part of town, what is the transport situation like, both in terms of motorized and non-motorized, and how is this linked to the greenhouse gas emissions in that part of town, what are the consumer goods being there linked to the economic state of the population, And how is this linked to land use models? And based on all this information combined, how can we create alternative scenarios for the future? And where do we see good opportunities in between all of these sectors, which can actually move us one step forward? Maybe not a giant jump, but at least improving the situation. So, and this, for example, has been done in cities like London and Paris, which have a lot of resources and a lot of researchers working very closely together with the city. The question then is, what did they learn? You know, how can we discuss what opportunities then there are for Norway? How can we contribute with Norwegian knowledge into this kind of integrated assessment? What can we learn from them? So basically, to use these kind of approaches in order to build more integrated cross-scale infrastructure systems for our cities. Not business as usual. You have the waterway, you have cars, you have trains, you have high-rise buildings, you have low-rise residential, but try to integrate it in some way. Look at where are the needs for energy and electricity, at which parts of the city are being used by a lot of people at certain parts of the day, and how can we make sure we look at this in a holistic manner. And then how can we use intelligent design in order to improve this, and how can we use technologies in order to make sure this goes a bit more smoothly? Because of course, after all, in the Western world, a lot of cities are already built. They are expanding, they're shrinking, they're being upgraded, but at least there is an existing built environment. We're not just going to knock down everything and build some solution we think is ideal now, but will be old and outdated in 5 years from now. So we have to deal with what we have. How can we deal with this in an intelligent way? And of course, we are working with this at European scale. A lot of different industries, public government, and researchers combined. And some of the main challenges we're dealing with is, well, we have these technologies, we have these tools for integrated assessment. The question is, it's no good when it's just a bunch of researchers sitting in their ivory tower at the university. You need to have them integrated in urban planning, for example, at a municipality office, or even in legislation, or in policy programs, or in quality programs. So how do you do that? How do you connect the technologies and the methods with the actual practical day-to-day policy making? And how do you create a framework so that you don't just deal with the design and the construction of something and then you monitor it for a year and then you abandon it, but that you actually look at 5, 10, 20 years ahead? In addition, what are you going to measure? Are you just going to measure energy and emissions? Or are you also going to look at the broader environmental quality, user quality, architectural quality? And all in all, so a lot of people are working on distinct parts of this kind of transformation. So how do you gather the information, the experiences, both good ones and bad ones, and how do you make sure others learn from them? And in addition, when we do have all of these goals, we need a lot of people, you know. Most of the people in this room, I guess, are either trained as planners or architects or engineers or sociologists or economists or ecologists. And we need everyone. We need all those disciplines also for smart cities. That's no change. The change is that in order to get all these people to work together, we need a lot of cooperation, we need communication. So we need people who are trained in this holistic approach. So we need someone, also people who can integrate, and that's my personal favorite down there. It's these integrators. So both each discipline on this board, there's probably many more, but also then people who are specifically trained at trying to put everything together in one holistic approach. And those are the challenges we are working with in this European Smart Cities and Communities initiative. It has a lot of different legs to stand on, so there's an alignment both of research, of industry and innovation, of policy, of funding, and trying to create some kind of roadmap or different kinds of roadmaps for how Europe is going to move towards smarter cities in the future, both in terms of design, in terms of technology, in terms of stakeholder processes, and in terms of policy. So what we are dealing with specifically is kind of integrated urban energy planning. So how do you connect the urban planning experts to the energy engineers, and how do you get them to cooperate, not just one and the other doing each their own thing? So how do you work with urban energy networks, both in terms of thermal and electricity? How do you deal with buildings? We're still going to create buildings, of course, individual buildings, but how are they linked to the urban energy network, and how do they connect with each other? Maybe they become better at actually exchanging electricity and heating and cooling with each other when needed. And of course, we also need to look at energy supply. And then the past year, actually also transport and ICT were added. In the beginning, we were mainly dealing with energy efficiency, stationary energy, but now it's being expanded to transport and ICT. So a lot of roadmaps and priorities are being made here. The question is, where is Norway? Because a lot of these roadmaps, so a lot of cities are actually joining up to try out something, not just test technologies, but also to check, well, how can this be embedded in legislation? How can this be embedded in a policy program at urban scale? What kind of stakeholders do need to be involved? All this kind of thing. And it's important that we participate both in order to give our priorities, make sure they are included, but also to learn from all of those experiences that are being documented and monitored for a long time ahead. So some of the specific issues that Norway can contribute with, for example, Norway is internationally renowned for advanced energy monitoring, for energy efficiency, for renewable energy. We have a lot to teach other people there. At the same time, we need to become better at looking at the exchange between cities and industry. For example, can cities be used to store and generate energy? Can they exchange energy and electricity with industries nearby? Can we, in that way, make better use both of the renewable energy we generate and can we become more energy efficient over time? In addition, of course, quality of life. Norway always ends up highest ranking at international scale. Question is, when we have to deal with climate change mitigation, adaptation, we have to work with energy efficiency. So how are we going to improve or at least maintain quality of life? How do we make sure we keep architectural and cultural values very highly valued? And how do we create these robust environments? So it is very important to participate in this European program with these kinds of priorities intact, because it's not sure that other countries have the same priorities. So the thing is, if everyone, of course, as an individual industry or city, you could join this kind of program. You can travel to Brussels, you can try to put your mark on policy. It's much easier if it's a large group of people doing so as one voice. So that is why we invite you to join this Norwegian shadow group for smart cities and energy efficiency. It's led by the Zero Emission Building Center and NTNU. And we are trying to gather all this Norwegian input in order to have a stronger voice in Brussels. So basically, in order to really try to influence priorities, in order to influence funding, policy, and research and education, to make sure that all of these priorities are according to the Norwegian ones. Thank you. Well.